Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Prince's Trust Talks in collaboration with Facebook. Today we'll be having a panel discussion with some amazing guests celebrating the LGBT plus community in the workplace. And you will learn how to access a diverse talent of young people by partnering with the Prince's Trust. My name is Prit Palsurge, and I will be your host for today. I work in the operations team in Central England at the Prince's Trust and worked within the health and social care sector for the past 10 years. I have a key drive to help support young people with social mobility, and I'm an open and active member of the LGBT plus community within work and outside work too. The Prince's Trust is one of the largest youth charities in the UK. We support thousands of young people aged 11 to 30 with confidence, courses and careers. Our vision is that every young person should have the chance to succeed. Today, we'll be talking about how your company can celebrate the LGBT plus community within the workplace, from the recruitment process, retention and work culture. If you are a company that is interested in finding diverse talent, the Prince's Trust are here for you. You can get access to pre-screened diverse talent at our amazing innovative Get Hired events. Have a look at the video. What an amazing video that was. So please do get in touch with our Get Hired teams. We'll also be posting our email in the chat for you to get in touch with us. So let's start to set the scene about why we are here today. As you know, coronavirus has had a huge impact and implications on all of us, especially with young people being at the forefront of the pandemic. The LGBT plus workforce is far more racially diverse and more likely to include women, transgender employees, and people with more varied sexual orientations than in the past, particularly among younger generations, such as Generation Z and the Millennials. We know that these will make up most of the workforce by 2025. So that's why it's really important to start embracing change now to include a more diverse workforce as we go ahead in the years. Here are some stats that we wanted to talk about. So we found that 40% of the LGBT plus employees are not out at work, and 26% of these individuals wish they could be out. At the same time, 36% of out employees have either lied or covered parts of their identities at work in the past year. So as you can see, these are stark stats that we need to start focusing on a lot more in the work that we do and the way that we are making a more diverse talent. So let's get started on what we've all been waiting for, why you are all here today to speak to our very esteemed welcomed guest. So as we do go along, please feel free to pop your feedback in the chat section, ask any questions, show your support for our great speakers. We really do want to hear from you, and we'll also be posting more information as we go along. So as I mentioned, we've got some amazing panelists today. So I'm going to ask them all to introduce them now. So Joseph, if you could introduce yourself first, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Joseph Harwood. I am a young trust ambassador, and my pronouns are whatever you want, as long as you're saying them with a smile. I know where you're coming from. And in my work, I'm a visual artist. I've been working for over a decade, and I focus specifically in cosmetics, and I've been working for the last 5 years behind the scenes with cosmetics business about inclusivity and creating products that really talk about that.
Thank you, Joseph. And Paul, if we can go over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to be here this morning. My name is Paul Martin. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the Chief Executive of Lgbt Foundation. And the thing that I'm hoping to get out of today is a real sense of what some of your priorities are And also just in terms of some of the statistics we've already seen and the statistics I'm going to share with you, I really want to sort of like ensure that young LGBT people can be their very best selves in their work and their career.
Thanks, Paul. And Nikki.
Thank you. And again, thanks for inviting me for this event today. Hi, my name's Nikki. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a recruiter at Facebook and a proud member of the Pride Out London committee. Today's important to me for two reasons. Firstly, I'm passionate about building an environment where people feel a sense of belonging. And secondly, I did experience discrimination in the workplace, which affected my earlier career. Back then, driven by a lack of trust, I made a decision to hide my identity from new employers. I turned out to be the wrong decision, and repeating the cycle only made it harder, and I was tired of hiding who I was. I decided to take control of my own future and use my experiences to work at companies such as Facebook that are committed to hiring diverse talent and building a culture of inclusion, not only for the LGBTQ community, but for all underrepresented communities.
Thanks for that, Nikki, and welcome to you all. Thank you for being here again today with us. So we're going to go straight into some questions for our great panelists. So Paul, I'm going to come to you first. Again, thank you for joining us. Please, can you set the scene for the audience and what current state of play is for the LGBT community within the world of work?
Yeah, no, really happy to do that. And Prick, you need to keep an eye. I've been told I've got 6 minutes and I can get very passionate and carried away. So feel free to come in and challenge me at any point. So I think that my starting point is to recognise, as you started out this presentation, the impact that COVID is having on LGBT communities and the disproportionate impact that COVID is having on LGBT communities compared to the general population. We have seen, my charity and across my sector as a whole, significant increase in the number of LGBT people coming forward because of feelings of real isolation, real anxiety, and a real sense of mental health distress. We are seeing quite a significant number of people feeling really lonely and detached from their community. We have been working and supporting people, particularly last summer, where people felt that they weren't able to kind of go to their pride events, they weren't able to sort of like celebrate their identity and be who they were. And I think particularly for young LGBT people, there was a general sense of people feeling that they were being punished. We've seen a real increase in the number of young people self-harming. We've seen an increase in their experiences of homo, bi, and transphobia. And we've seen a real significant increase in the experiences of poor mental health. And there's been a corresponding reduction in the availability of services that people can kind of go to as well through lockdown. So there's a perfect storm really being created. And all of this has an impact on how people are performing at work, but also how people might feel excluded and more distant from the workforce. I think that there's a real lack of feelings of job security. There's a real lack of feelings of stable employment, particularly for young LGBT people. And I think young LGBT people are much more likely to be unemployed or to have lost their jobs or to have actually been put on furlough. So again, that's putting mounting pressure on young LGBT people. And we're also seeing an increase in young people's need for financial assistance. People are really genuinely struggling, and certainly welfare rights charities are reporting that young people in particular are being really badly disadvantaged by the events of the last year. My own charity has seen a substantial increase in the amount of self-reported domestic abuse cases, and also we are seeing an increase in the number of people who are experiencing a lack of safety in their home environment. They're either living in sort of like home environments where they don't feel safe, or they feel that they've been forced back into the closet. And when you think that for many of us, working from home has been something that we've had to do for the last year. If I think back to my early 20s when I was living in a bedsit in South Manchester, very rarely there, living with complete strangers, having a padlock on the bedroom door, having a padlock in the kitchen cabinet. These are not exactly perfect examples or perfect situations for people to be working from home. And I think that particularly for young LGBT people, we have seen a significant increase in people's genuine feelings of a lack of safety and a real sense of kind of vulnerability. And these aren't coming together to sort of like, you know, enable young LGBT people to flourish at work. I'm going to add some more statistics to the ones that you introduced at the beginning, Prit. So Vodafone International did a survey with young LGBT people, and they found that 41% of 18 to 25-year-olds went back into the closet when they entered their first job. 3/4 of LGBT people generally hid their sexual orientation or their gender identity at work at least once, and more than half were not out because they feared not only discrimination, but they feared that their prospects for promotion would be hampered. And 1 in 5 are saying that being open about their sexual orientation or their gender identity is the hardest thing they've ever done in a work environment. The Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development earlier this month for LGBT History Month launched a fairly significant piece of research which found that LGBT workers experience higher levels of conflict and lower levels of psychological safety and lower job satisfaction compared to the general workforce. And over 40% of LGBT workers experienced a conflict at work in the previous 12 months. And a conflict meant that people felt that they were being undermined, they were being humiliated, or they felt really embarrassed because of their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And this got worse, particularly with LGBT people of colour and also for trans and non-binary people. Over half of trans workers experienced some form of conflict, and very little of that conflict they reported had been resolved. I think also very, very starkly, trans workers were much less likely to feel safe. 1 in 8 of all the trans respondents to that survey had actually experienced unwanted sexual attention in the workplace. So these figures are replicated again and again and again. Study after study after study finds that employment, that LGBT people are not always feeling as safe as their heterosexual counterparts in employment. Many LGBT people in NHS surveys, in the armed services, in business, in the civil service and in hospitality sector report feelings of negativity, conflict and harassment. And I think that the most major survey was the 2017 National LGBT Survey, the largest survey of its kind in the world, found that 24% of young LGBT people aged 18 to 24 had experienced homophobia, biphobia or transphobia in the workplace. Solely because they were either lesbian, gay, bisexual or trans, and that harassment was verbal, could be physical, or could also be quite inappropriate comments. So I think that it goes to show that employers have a significant role to play in ensuring the LGBT people, especially young LGBT people, particularly young LGBT people entering the marketplace, the workplace. Employers have got an incredibly important role to play to ensure people's safety and their security. Now, we're going to hear from some fantastic speakers this morning about some examples of the way that employers can participate and engage and sort of like stand up and support their LGBT workforce. And I'm going to come back in a little while and actually talk about some of the positive things that people, that employers can actually do. But so that's me setting the scene, and sort of like it's a bit of a grim picture. I make no apology for sort of like sharing those statistics because they are quite significantly stark and they're quite significantly different for young LGBT people compared to other parts of the workforce.
They are. Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing that with us. And it is truly upsetting statistics that you shared, but we will be actioning them and hopefully changing them as we go along. especially in our talks today. Nikki, I'm going to come over to you now, if that's okay. So, coming from a recruitment background, can you share some insight on how companies can create a more successful attraction strategy?
Yes, great question. So today I'm going to take you on a fictional candidate journey to explain what attracts a candidate to a company. So hi, I'm Nikki, I identify as a gay woman, and I'm out at work. I'm out to my work colleagues, my friends and my family. I'm a recruiter and I work at an amazing recruitment agency. I joined 5 years ago and started on the same day as David and John. David and John and I became great friends. We even hang out during the weekend and we even go on holiday with our partners. David and John have recently, David has recently had twins with his wife, and John has recently had a baby with his girlfriend. We have a healthy competition at work and we consistently reference as the dream team. David and John have recently been promoted and managing teams. I interviewed for the same roles, but was not successful. My feedback was that I hadn't had enough people management experience, which I thought was odd, as neither did David or John. While I'm very happy with my friends, I'm very disappointed, especially as I recently led a critical business project, managing a team of 5 people. The project was a huge success and I received positive feedback. I love my job. I work hard. I'm an overachiever, but I'm not progressing. I decide to look for a new role and search the job boards. I find a few companies that are looking for rockstar recruiters, but aren't we all rockstar recruiters in our own way? It's surprising how many job descriptions have gender biased language and a long list of expert skill requirements and requirement for candidates from top universities. I find a role, I research the company. I'm not only interested in the career growth, I'm also interested in the company culture, diversity agenda, and if they have a community of employee resource groups. The company has all 3, but there isn't much information on the careers page. We don't have an ERG at my current company, so the company is appealing. I apply for the role, I speak to a recruiter and progress to the next interview. My interview is at the company offices. I'm looking forward to seeing the offices and the environment, and I hope to have an opportunity to meet some of the team. Fast forward to the interview. I'm well prepared. I'm a little nervous. I arrive at reception and I get misgendered by the receptionist who brushes it off. I feel embarrassed and anxious. My interviewer arrives and we head to a meeting near the reception. The incident with the receptionist almost aroused me, but I'm determined to have a great interview. The interviewer fires off questions, asks me what university I attended. I explain that I didn't attend a university, but I have built a successful career so far. I see the interviewer, but the interviewer no longer sees me, and in 20 minutes the interview is over and I leave. I'm confused and upset from the experience. I didn't see the offices. I didn't meet anyone. I didn't learn more about the company. I didn't hear from the company again. I restart my job search and find another role. The job description tells me the company is looking for an experienced recruiter with a list of skills that match my experience. The job description also mentions the company is an equal opportunity employer. I researched the company website and it has lots of information about the company's diversity strategy. There are employee stories sharing their experiences and a section dedicated to the ERG communities. And there's even a picture from the 2019 Pride celebrations that the companies ran. I apply and speak to a recruiter. The role sounds great and so does the company. The recruiter calls me back a few days later and the manager has asked to meet me and to meet with 2 other team members. I'm excited, but I'm worried I'll have another bad experience. Fast forward to the interview. I arrive at the company, anxious but determined to have a great interview. The receptionist is welcoming. The interviewer meets me and walks me through the office to grab a coffee. I see posters of the ERG communities, and I see people like me and my friends. I meet the manager. She introduces me to her 2 team members. I learn lots about the role, the team and the company. All the interviewers share their work experiences, and I'm really impressed by the openness and how empowered they are to do their best work. I chat with the recruiter before I leave. He tells me he's heading to a meeting about a company referral event they are running in a few weeks with the LGBT ERG group. The aim of the event is to attract people from the community, and he also explains that employees with positive work experiences are more likely to refer friends or ex-colleagues and promote a great company and a great company culture based on their own experiences. I tell myself if I get the job, I have lots of friends to refer. Fast forward, I got the job. So to summarise, when building an attraction strategy, also consider the candidate experience. Creating inclusive job descriptions starts to build a company brand and an inclusive employer and will attract a wider pool of diverse candidates. A company's careers page is the window into the organisation. Candidates spend a lot of time researching and how it feels to work at that company. And candidates also want to know what that company is doing to build an inclusive workplace. And finally, the most valuable asset is an employee, and every employee can be an ally or an ambassador of the company. Meeting a diverse range of people during an interview process is a great opportunity for candidates to experience how it would feel to work at a company. Employer referrals drives a great way to find talent, not just for the LGBT community, but also all underrepresented communities. Back to Prep.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And what a strong story that was. And I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with what you exactly said then. Please do speak out. Tell us what your story has been during your times for interviews. But again, thank you, Nikki. Joseph, I'm going to come to you now, if that's all right. As a young person who's been supported by the Prince's Trust, can you tell us a bit more about your journey, please?
Yeah, of course. So I was always gender ambiguous from knee high to a grasshopper. I was very, very, like, people couldn't distinguish if I was a boy or a girl, and it wasn't something that I elected or I chose to go through. It was what happened to me. And I think before I even got an experience of adult world, I was being socialized in a really positive way, because when I was 14, I was scouted as a model, and it was like this incredible juxtaposition between someone saying I was special and then the lived experience of going to school and actually being different to everyone else. So I started to become really aware that the things that I wanted to do in life were going to be met with a barrier, because even as a model, there was limited options of what I could do. And I went to go through all these different job interviews with makeup artists that were basically working for counters. They were saying, oh, let's go through the process of getting you a job in a retail store. And I was consistently met with the same criticism. You are an amazing makeup artist. You've been all around the world as a model and you've done your own makeup, which is a bigger portfolio than I guess anyone on the team has. But because your image is too strong, quote unquote, we can't actually have you in the front of a store. So I looked at the different things I could do, and I looked at bypassing those gatekeepers, because I still needed to earn a living while I was going to college. I didn't qualify for any support, so I had to find my bus fare to do my A-levels, but no one would employ me. So I started to look at work experience, and I worked with an entertainment agency that I thought was more inclusive. And I began to realize that even in that environment, I was told I couldn't wear my usual makeup, which was just a very natural makeup, to public events. So even in work experience, I found it really difficult to just thrive at myself. And I had the top grades in my year, pretty much. I had a huge experience that I traveled around the world. But still, because of being myself, I found these complete ridiculous obstacles. So I looked to social media as a way to bypass those gatekeepers and actually seek out a form of employment. And at the very beginning, YouTube was actually quite a legitimate income for young creatives. I started to talk about my experience on social media over 10 years ago, and I started to actually show people how to use makeup to feel comfort in their transition. If people can't afford to get their full surgery, or they can't afford to get any form of medical support around the world, I would show people how to either masculinize and paint on a structural face, or feminize and create their more feminine face. And my videos became really viral. They became actually as much viewed as any of the cisgender creators in this country. I then found out about a competition that Simon Cowell was running, and it was based on America's Got Talent. It was called the U Generation competition. And every single month for a year, different categories of talent would come forward. So a singer, or I don't know, it was amazing. There were so many big people, and a lot of people remember Little Mix, the band, trying to do the accent challenge, because that was the after show, and there was Harry Styles and Kylie Minogue and all these fabulous interviews. So the category that I chose to enter was makeup, and I chose to show people how to transition with makeup. So I used a masculine effect and then a feminine effect, and spoke about the difficulty of my journey. They brought in some judges. The judges thought I was incredible and they chose me as the winner. Now, 7 months down the line, and all the categories are continuing to go on in real time, and I find out that I have not only won my category, but I've been chosen to win the entire contest as a result of external judges. So they offered me a six-figure cash prize. It was an incredible thing. I was in my early 20s and I didn't have any proper income support. I don't come from wealth. And it was a huge investment into my career. And I was jumping for joy because I could buy my mum a dishwasher and I could take it to Paris and I could do all the things that I'd always wanted to do. I could start to learn how to make makeup, not just put it on my face. And they took the entire competition down. They didn't want to show a success story of someone that was gender ambiguous, that was in the trans spectrum, as a success story that wasn't there because of exclusion, but was there because of talent and was there because of just being themselves and being great at their job. So I looked at things that I could do to learn how to build a business, and the Prince's Trust were actually one of the few places that I felt would actually give me the support I needed to learn to build a business. And they offered something called an enterprise scheme, which is a basic kind of business planning scheme where you get the logistics and you kind of figure out what you want to do, and then you learn to build a business plan. You get assigned a mentor, and I had this fantastic experience in the Brighton team with my mentor. And it was really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity because they offer a small startup loan and you can really dictate how you want your career path to go. So I was I was given that sort of support by the Prince's Trust that I never received in even work experience and within the industry that I was great at. And then I had this fantastic experience of winning this contest and then not having the exposure from winning it. So I just thought I'm going to turn every obstacle in my life into something that projects me forward. So I went to London College of Fashion and I started studying a biochemistry master's in cosmetic development, and I became actually a product technician. So I knew how to talk to a lab, I knew how to construct in the lab, and I knew how to design products. So for the last 5 years, I've been working predominantly with beauty businesses on how to create more inclusivity within their actual work teams, how young people won't go through the same experience I've had, but also creating products. In 2017, I was approached by a young girl who had actually watched my videos, and at this time, I'd become the most ever watched trans creator in the UK. I've been the Google homepage, done a United Nations campaign, and I've had over 100 million views on my content. She said to me that I had a really special technique that she wanted to capitalize on, and we worked with L'Oreal Innovations and developed a product line that was designed for trans people, by trans people, and it became so critically acclaimed throughout 2018 and 19. It's called Jekka Black. And it was just an example of showing that even though you can go through that experience where you're not allowed to be yourself, you can still turn it into a positive and change the industry. And since then, I've been talking to every major cosmetic umbrella about how they can be inclusive when it comes to recruitment, to the workforce, behind the scenes, in marketing, and so on. So
Joseph, I'm going to have to stop you there, if that's okay. Sorry about that. But no, thank you so much. And I have seen your makeup. It's fantastic. And you're doing an amazing job in supporting more and more young people. And thank you for sharing that story with us. Paul, I'm going to come back over to you. In a nutshell, what do you think is the best ways to enable individuals to bring themselves to work?
Well, clearly there needs to be a certain amount of self-confidence. I mean, you know, we've just heard the two previous speakers' own personal stories about, you know, with Nikki, it was very, very much about how, you know, it was a tale of two halves, wasn't it? One person, you know, one organisation treating her very poorly and another treating her really, really well. And I think that Joseph, you know, being your authentic and confident self is something that's really, really important. But what happens if you don't have that inner confidence? What can employers do? Because I think it's really, really important that everyone has the right to feel safe at work and the freedom to be themselves in order so that they can flourish. And we can see that there have been some employers that have really embraced that. Stonewall does the Workplace Equality Index. It's a really, really good starting point for employers. I mean, there's many people in the audience today that are doing, I'm sure, fantastic work. If we were in person, I'd be asking you to kind of like call out from the audience some of the examples that you had done that were really, really positive. And I would encourage you to put that in the chat so that other people can sort of like, you know, see best practice and you can share best practice. But I think that in order for people to feel safe and secure, that employers have got to do more. And we can start off by having inclusive policies. We can start off by actually having policies that are gender neutral, that sort of like include LGBT people's partners, that actually sort of like, there are many stories of people sort of like struggling to sort of like, engage in workplace banter when people saying, what did you do at the weekend? And sort of like suddenly your partner becomes completely gender neutral, and you start to really fall over words because you don't want to sort of like disclose the gender of your partner and therefore outing yourself. And people can spend an enormous amount of emotional capital sort of like hiding themselves from their work colleagues because of the fear of what might happen. I think it's really important to have LGBT workplace role models and champions. It's really, really important that people who are out and are bringing their full selves to work, actually model that and actually sort of like, become a workplace champion or a workplace role model. Stonewall's Workplace Equality Index found that less than 19% of trans people had ever seen another out trans person at work. That can feel really lonely. That can feel really isolating if you feel that you're the only trans or non-binary or LGBT person in the workplace. I think it's really, really important that leaders within organisations model inclusivity as well, and publicly celebrating LGBT campaigns. Nikki said very, very clearly, walking through an office, seeing photographs of herself and her friends reflected back. I'm assuming it wasn't you personally in those pictures, Nikki, but people like you. You get that real sense of belonging, that actually you are included here, that actually you belong here. And I think that's really, really important. And certainly my experience, I mean, I work for an LGBT charity. So, what we're trying to do is we're trying to be ever more inclusive with sort of like a whole range of underrepresented communities. We've done a huge amount of work in terms of sort of like, encouraging trans and non-binary people to not only come and work for us, but actually also to kind of use our services. And there's a direct correlation between the more visible trans and non-binary people that employ, more trans and non-binary people come forward as service users. Makes perfect sense. We've done a lot of work in the past in terms of gender balance, and we're now doing a lot of work to sort of like encourage queer people of colour to sort of like be involved. We've got internal working groups, and I would say that this work is important. It's really, really time consuming. It's not something that happens overnight. I'm often asked to kind of like, give advice. In the chat, there's a couple of people saying, what would your top 3 tips be? And I think that my top 3 tips would be, be authentic, be honest and be respectful, but also work with people and co-produce and co-design. We're currently doing some work to improve the number of LGBT people of colour that we employ. And so we're radically changing our employment practices. We're radically changing the way that we recruit people. We're making sure that every panel has a trans person on the panel, has an LGBT person of colour on the panel, because evidence shows that people respond much better if people like them ask them questions. The language that you use with your employment and recruitment advertising is really, really key. We're also kind of very conscious that different people respond in different ways, of different styles of kind of like recruitment. So we started using videos that people can send a 10-minute video in of themselves to talk about themselves and answer some questions, rather than actually sending in a CV. We're getting remarkably different results. We're getting very different people coming forward. They might be dissuaded from sort of like coming forward in a more formalized recruitment process, and actually changing the way that you do things is really, really important. I give a lot of advice to organizations inclusive, and you've got to be really serious about it. You can't just sort of like play around the edges. This is fundamentally shifting. But with some of the evidence that I gave at the beginning, in terms of some of those stark statistics, we've got to do more. We've got to do more for young LGBT people in particular. That's what this seminar is about. And there are lots and lots of really, really positive ways that employers can adopt to sort of like, ensure that LGBT young people feel safer to be out and bring their authentic selves to the workplace. There's some great tools out there. I mentioned the Stonewall Workplace Equality Index. It's a brilliant place for employers to start. We have our own training academy. Anyone wanting to increase their knowledge and their confidence about LGBT inclusion can kind of like, either have a bespoke series of training modules developed or actually part of our existing curricula. We offer a range of different modules.
Interject there as well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. So
thanks so much.
Can I just finish by saying there's some really good examples out there for help, and don't ever feel you can't put your hand up to ask for help, because that's what we're there for.
Thanks, thank you so much. And it is really important. We spend a lot of our times at work, so it needs to be that safe place and that happy family that we go to work with, because it's a lot of time of our lives. Thank you so much. Joseph, I'm going to come over to you. So what initiatives do you think can be put into place at work to avoid tokenism?
I think what Paul just said was really, really valid, because so many people are scared of making missteps, and I think that there's a reason for that, because people don't want to cause offence. But sometimes I think we need to be aware that we can make missteps, because as long as we've got the facilities there to correct them, to learn from, and to provide support to people, that's the way we will learn. I mean, so many times I've been to interviews and people have assumed I'm there because I'm the model and I'm actually a formulist, or I've been in situations where people just assume that because of what I am, I'm there because I want an ambition to be famous or something. And it's like, well, naturally, no, I run a legitimate business and I want to be here because I'm valuable and I offer something that someone could maybe learn from. In my personal experience, I've been working with brands from Estee Lauder to briefly speaking to Shiseido, but I also work with Pooge, and they're beauty brands that had really started to become aware of the amazing things we can do. And sometimes it's as simple as pointing out the obvious. I mean, so many times beauty brands use a picture of an eye. It's like they only use female eyes, but who knows whose eye that is? It's like sometimes people just need to be reminded of the silly things that they're doing without thinking about it. But the way that I think the best thing to eliminate these obstacles from happening within a workplace is to actually have people in the workplace that reflect what you're bringing to the table. So instead of just being in an inclusivity campaign, quite often, because I had a very big career on YouTube, people wanted me to be in a makeup brand that was inclusive. And I was like, but why? I want to be there because I'm good at the job. I don't want to be there because I'm just me. I want to earn my way there. So I think people need to cross that line between giving people representation because they're due it and also allowing people to earn that spot. For me, I'm really into discipline and being skilled and learning my trade and being able to be great at what I do. And I want to be in a position because I'm worth it. But sometimes I think just being yourself in a situation really does that. I mean, when I went to become a Prince's Trust ambassador, I never saw anyone like me. I never saw anyone like that in the row with the Prince walking down and the trumpets playing and things. It was just incredible. And I thought, if I keep on doing things, not in an obvious way, but I just be myself and I be confident and I show people that you can be yourself and successful, that will hopefully inspire young people to do the same. So it just means that you need to give people the opportunity and give people the chance to prove their value. I think.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. I think the note that you said is being yourself, and I totally agree. Being yourself and you will triumph as much as you can. And thank you for sharing that with us. Nikki, to you, how can companies create an inclusive culture?
Another great question. And I think Paul and Joseph have talked quite a bit about this during their session. I think as the workplace evolves, we must recognise inclusion as a work in progress, and we must also think about it reflecting the outside world. So I think we have to hold people accountable. We have to make sure that our executives at the very top are promoting the behaviours that we want the business to promote, and we have to hold people accountable. So employee engagement surveys are really key to understand how people feel, and they have to feel they're in a safe environment where they can share that information. And also, if you see bad behaviours, call that out. it's, be a great ally. Allyship is one of the real key things for the community. Paul mentioned, 40% of people will not be out in the workplace because they feel it would impact their career. So it's about seeing that person and being seen and speaking up for them. If it makes them uncomfortable, we have to do it. And if people feel uncomfortable, we have to make them feel uncomfortable, because we have to respect our differences. I think one of the strongest stories that I have from Facebook is that during Pride Month, we decorated all of our offices in London, and there was just rainbows and colour and everything. And we had that for the whole month of June, and we had a person come in for an interview. And based on what they saw when they came in and how they felt, they knew that we were going to be a company they wanted to join. So it's really helped them go through the process, and they actually accepted the job and they started at our company. So I think being seen, but also seeing what's in your company is really important also.
That's brilliant, and I love the idea of decorating your places of work, especially for that Pride Month. I bet that was really exciting for them. Thank you all so much, and thank you for taking part in becoming our panel today as well. We're going to move on to some questions and answers from our amazing audience that we've had today. So I'm going to ask this first question that's coming to Paul, if that's all right. So how do you incite real and lasting change in a small organisation, so saying up to 30 people, when it comes to inclusion?
Well, I think I've answered some of that. Well, I hope I've answered some of that in what I was saying previously, but I think there needs to be a sense of authenticity from the leadership. So I think there needs to be some real commitment, a real sense of wanting to achieve kind of change. I think sometimes it can be easier to come out in a small space where you know each other well. Sometimes it might be harder. So, I mean, I think that, you just need to recognize what kind of culture do you have, how inclusive can it be. But I mean, I think that if, for people that, are not coming out in a working environment, there's got to be some reasons for that. And I think sort of if you're the person responsible for trying to make that space inclusive, it's trying to get a sense of, if in that workforce of 30 you haven't got anybody who's out as LGBT, what's going on? Are you recruiting in the wrong kind of way and not actually attracting LGBT people? Is there something about your workplace that is off-putting or sort of like sending out a negative message? If that's not the case, and you have got LGBT staff that are not out, it's about trying to understand why that might be the case. So I think that there's some great ideas, the idea, Nikki was saying that her workplace was sort of like, rainbow for Pride Month. My workplace LGBT Foundation is rainbow all year round. There's sort of like, there are real opportunities to sort of like create a welcoming environment. Something that people often overlook are toilet facilities. So some places have very, very binary male and female only toilet places, and for some trans and non-binary people, they find that a very difficult choice to make. Sometimes they have to make choices that kind of like completely go against their identity by only having a binary choice of toilets and stuff. So it's understanding situations that might not automatically occur to you that actually might be really off-putting to people. But I would really encourage people to persevere and sort of like, set a series of very, very quick and easy wins. And stick with it as well, because it can take a long time. We went from employing zero trans and non-binary people to now employing about 20 or trans and non-binary period over a 6-year period. It didn't happen overnight. It took time. And then you started to see some progress with 1 or 2 people, and then you started to see others, and then there was more of a confidence. And now it's about something we don't really even pay much attention to. We're looking to kind of like recruit the best people for the jobs. So I think that, you've got to persevere with it. You've got to be authentic about it, and you've got to recognize that it isn't going to happen overnight. But when it does happen, and when it does start to happen, it makes a significant difference to people, and not just your LGBT members of the workforce, other people as well. Many of us have got LGBT siblings and parents and family members and friends, and actually feeling more at ease with ourselves in the place that we really.
Ashley, thank you very much. That's a great answer to that question. Another one that's come in is, how can different staff networks work more collaboratively? So Nikki, if I can come to you for that, please.
Yes, great question as well. I think if we consider the spectrum of which we live and work, and embracing our differences definitely help build an inclusive work culture, but that takes work from all the communities. But one of the things that we would also do is run our ERG community events and invite all employees to create allyship and intersectional behaviours. So we don't just wave our flag during June. We try to wave it as much as we can throughout the year, but we also want to embrace the other ERGs within our business, because we know that there are people that identify more than one of those. So it's being able to run those events and socialise them. And if you run the first one and not many people come, they most certainly will come to the next one, because they need to build up that trust and see who's turning up for those types of events. But also bringing, again, back to the senior people within the organisation and really championing the work that we do, but also being out and being able to show that it hasn't impacted the way that they work or the career that they're in, or even the development of them in the business.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Another question that's just come in: how can you celebrate the LGBTQ plus individuals in the workplace without them having to fall on responsibility to plan events and activities? And Joseph, if I can come to you for that one.
Within my business, I work in more of a freelance basis. So even though I do have teams that I collaborate with, I go everywhere and all around the place. But I wanted to quickly say in regards to the last point, in terms of the senior kind of the people that are in senior roles in these companies that need to be held to account as well. Sometimes I feel like because a lot of trans people and a lot of non-binary people are not taught the value of what they provide, they sometimes go into workplace and they bring something amazing and they don't get the actual payment that they deserve. So I always want to say, like, that is such a good point, because people need to be educated within these structures that anyone that comes in and provides something, if they bring something to the table, even in the manner of inclusivity, they need to be given the value they deserve. But within collaborations and teams and things, to make people feel included and to make people feel like they are part of things, I think is the most important thing, is just seeing people like them. It's just seeing a reflection of someone like you succeeding, and often there isn't someone in a superior position in a company that looks like me, but I always remind people that one day I might be up there, so who knows. I just have ambitions to be fabulous, so I think that's the best thing I can say as we change forward.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Joseph. We've just had an amazing question come up in the chat as well. Nikki, I'd like you to ask it. What advice would you give to an LGBTQ plus job seeker who experiences homophobia and transphobia, etc., except from a role they referred to by a recruiter?
Call it out. I always believe, call that out. And I think we all have a responsibility as a recruiter to be the ambassador for that company. So it's my responsibility to actually set the scene with a candidate and make them feel safe and secure to share what they want to share on the call or in person. So I would say that I would own that responsibility, and to make that person feel that they can actually bring themselves to the call and be able to share their experience and to be recognised for that and not for anything else.
Definitely. Thank you so much. We have another question coming in just now for Joseph, if you don't mind answering this one. There seems to be a divergence between where businesses is heading with EDI and their values placed on diverse perspectives and rhetoric from government and national press, particularly around the trans people. what can businesses do in terms of overt outreach / promotion to really show that they are welcoming and encouraging those who are being told they are not welcome or may be concerned about access to facilities?
I think it's the LGBT community is really so diverse. There's so many people who have gone through their individual experiences and they have different needs, and it's not a clear-cut rule for everyone. For example, I never got the chance to come out because my body looked feminine before I even went to a doctor. It just was the way that my chemicals were. So I had this gender ambiguity put on me. It wasn't something that I elected to happen. And for me, that was quite stressful because if I went into a male bathroom, I would feel scared that I could be misgendered. They would think I was a girl in a boy's bathroom, basically, or whatever. So having a neutral toilet in like places like London Victoria now makes me so reassured, because I wouldn't. So many people are talking about this stuff in the news, and I think it's been dehumanized and made into a political topic instead of what actual people go through. And I'd rather just go to my own little place, and do you know what I mean? Like, because that's how I feel safer. So that goes back to the kind of concept of someone feeling safe. Do you make sure your people who could come in and be transgender or LGBT, do they feel safe? Do they feel safe that they're not going to be discriminated against or rejected because of them being themselves? I mean, there's so many things that I think we still need to work on and getting that balance right, because there is this tokenization that people just think if you put someone in that role, whether they're good or not, we're ticking a box. Well, we need to actually assess the fact that there are so many different people out there that are brilliant at the job. So showing people who have done a great job and who are in the community would be better than selecting someone new and showing them. So I think it's just like thinking about things like that, like how can you show to prospective people that you have experience being aware of that and ensuring that they feel safe within your business or within your team, I guess. I guess that's what I can say.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask one more question. And Paul, if you can answer this in a space of a minute, that would be amazing. This question says, I am starting next month as a CEO at a charity whose income halved due to COVID. I want my intentions about inclusivity to be clear from the start, but recognizing I'm learning in this space myself. Any suggestions for useful free resources for me or my team would be very welcome.
Well, definitely get in touch with me. We can certainly help you out. I've mentioned Stonewall Workplace Equality Index. It doesn't cost anything to join that. It only costs money once you start to kind of like use some of the products and stuff. But actually, there's a lot of free materials out there. I think that it's amazing that one of your first priorities as an incoming chief exec of a charity that's losing income is inclusivity. So I commend you for that. Well done. Keep your nerve. Do the very best you can with the resources. And actually, by being your authentic self, admitting your mistakes, being really, really honest, you can facilitate really, really open and honest conversations amongst your workforce and your volunteer force. And they are the ones that hold the solutions. They know better than you what needs to be done. So trust them, engage them, involve them, and co-produce your solutions. You don't need expensive consultants. You can start from the bottom up. You know, Nikki said, put a flag up for Pride Month. That's a brilliant start, and possibly might be the most radical step that your organisation has ever taken in its history. So don't underestimate the power of small positive steps, and good luck.
Brilliant, thank you so much. As I mentioned at the start, we're going to have a bit of a call to action. So now is time for that call to action. So I'm going to ask each of you guys as panelists to give me one key measurable action that the audience can take away from today and from today's talk. So Joseph, I'm going to come to you first.
Employ me, and give me lots of money. No, I'm joking. Just think about all the different things you can do within your team, and think about how you want things to go going forward. I think being aware and starting just thinking about ways of bringing people like me into positions that I'm great at doing or whatever. I think that's the first thing, just thinking about it, because every business is different. You have different logistical things that you have to work through, and just being aware. And like Paul said, having some of that imagery of the rainbow or the trans flag on Trans Visibility Day, and being conscious and sending an email out about when these things are happening, or maybe talking about how all these different moments throughout the year or bringing attention to these important causes would be a great first step.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Paul, one measurable outcome action from you.
I think just be patient, recognise this kind of change that you want to see takes time. I've mentioned a couple of times today, hold your nerve. We are going through some very difficult times at the moment with a very small minority of vocal detractors. You know, Nikki will remember this from the past. I remember it when, you know, I started out 30 years ago as a young gay man. You know, it will get better. We will overcome this. The detractors, you know, amount to a tiny number of people. And so I would just really encourage people to be patient, sort of like, you know, stick with it. Don't be distracted, and sort of like celebrate the small goals and achievements that you make at every step of the way. Yeah, just courage and courage of your convictions.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. And Nikki.
Companies think of the pandemic's been really hard for the community, and for and 1 year feels like 10 years for someone who's been isolated and who hasn't had contact with their friends or the community, and they could be hiding at home with their family, and that's been a whole year. So if you've got people in your business, reach out to them and just check in on them. You know, just a simple text or, you know, just a phone call, a virtual coffee means so much to someone who's having a really hard time. Isolation's hard. So if there's people in your business, just find out how they are.
Brilliant, thank you, and thank you again for your time today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, if you are a business who is looking for some young diverse talent, please do not hesitate to get in touch with our Get Hired teams. You have seen their emails and it will be posted again with any job opportunities you have, and let's help more young people get into work. This can be your opportunity to do great change. The below video that you're about to watch will show you how truly beneficial this event will be to your companies.
I'm Maisie and I work for a television production company called Studio Lambert. We started to get involved in Get Hired about 2 years ago. We wanted the chance to meet young people that might not have been able to get in front of us in any other way, and who had never had the chance to potentially get their foot in the door, as it were. So for us, it's really important that we are involved with Get Hired, because otherwise we would just never have met these young people. It's really hard if you have no contacts, and that's what we're trying to change. We've always wanted a very diverse mix of people, and that's diverse in every way, so socially diverse, culturally diverse. It's a really cool event. There's quite a bit of like nervous tension in the air, but it's not just the young people, it's the employees as well, because obviously it's a big deal for us as well. I mean, obviously we want you to come and work for us. And it's really cool. So you do a little pitch at the beginning. Young people decide if they want to come and meet you, and then one by one you meet them. And yeah, last year we actually hired a lovely young woman that we met, who's been with us for 6 months now. So Get Hired is really wonderful in getting young people into work.
Great. And just to let you know that the Get Hired events are now running digitally. So the email will again put in the chat box. As we're wrapping up now, I want to say a massive thank you to the Future Workforce Fund, which is a groundbreaking 2-year initiative that tests innovative ways of working and delivering support for young people in Greater Manchester. Also, we want to say a massive thank you to Facebook for working collaboratively on this event with us. We will be sharing this recording of the webinar, so please do share and take it out. But last but not least, I want to say a massive, great thank you to our 3 panelists today, Paul, Nikki and Joseph. I'm sure everybody has taken something from them, and they've been an amazing support for us today. Again, to our audience, thank you for being here with us, taking part today. Thank you for your questions and your great comments. We have been reading them and have been going along as we have been talking. And as I said at the beginning, take a key actionable measure from today. If there's one thing you can take, there's one thing. to please help our next generation. So be there, support us, and we will see you next time on a Princess Trust Talks. The next talks will be on International Women's Day on the 8th of March. So we look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you and take care.